Hey everybody, Riot Mort here with Riot Kent, and it is time for the patch 11.18 rundown. Another 2 weeks have gone by, time for a few more adjustments. At this point, when you're watching the video, NA Regionals is like half done, but we're sitting here in Wednesday land waiting for NA Regionals to get excited, so another tournament. So yeah, but yeah, time to make some changes. You ready for this, Kent?
All right, let's go.
Cool. The other thing that's crazy to talk about is we still have 2 months left in this set, but it definitely feels like we're winding down. We're not really doing big reworks anymore. There's like small. I think this is probably the last patch that'll have like champion ability reworks, except maybe one Tristana one next patch. But like we're getting down to it.
Is this the part where we reveal that we're bringing back Set 1 Pantheon as a dragon?
I will end you. I will end you because now players are going to want that. You realize that. Anyway.
Yes.
All right, well, let's talk about the patch and these changes. Let's start with large changes. Now, normally this is where I would show you system changes. There are none. This is where I would show you trait changes. There are none. This is where I'd show you 1 cost, 2 cost, 3 cost changes. There are none. Let's go to 4 cost. So, 4 cost. Ivern is getting kind of a rework, if you will. I think one of the big mistakes of Set 5 and 5.5 was that Ivern and Volibear were a perfect frontline pair, and both of them had giant AoE CC. That was kind of silly of us, to be frank. So what we're doing is we're changing Ivern 1 and 2, at least, to be less of a stun and more of what we're calling an interrupt. So it's technically a 0.5 second stun, and you'll see it. It's a much shorter little hop. It'll interrupt things like a Vel'Koz ult, or a Lucian ult. But you get right back to fighting. To compensate, Daisy gets a little bit of HP and AD. So, yeah, anything to add?
Yeah, kind of a profile shift. Like Ivern is more of like a frontline body that comes with an interrupt and lots of damage because Daisy does a decent chunk of damage, and then with this AD, she'll hit slightly harder. But no longer will it be doing that. No longer is like a CC unit for the frontline. So, yep. Big change in the profile shift over there.
Cool. Why don't you talk about Jax?
Yeah, Jax has been like a really, really flexible, strong, good, just standalone unit. Sometimes you don't play skirmisher, sometimes you play 3 skirmisher. And one of the best like 1-star units to find early on in the game. And so it's time to tune that back a little bit, and just in the data he's been like overperforming. So we're tuning back the HP so that he is easier to burst down with things like Bloodthirster, where he gets a shield, he'll scale with that slightly less, and then it gives you like a bigger window if you like CC him to like burst him down in that time. We're also tuning down his attack speed because of how fast he ramps up. Like it almost feels like if you don't kill Jax within the first like 10 seconds of the fight, he's just gonna run you over and you won't be able to burst through that like high AD plus lifesteal. And so we're tuning down the how fast he scales into a fight. And he needs some more time now to get to like a really high attack speed where he's dishing out tons of DPS.
Yep.
We're also putting in a 3-star Jax buff. So when you get to it, and because he suffers from melee, like he has to be in melee. He's a single target, so he should hit really hard and just like kill things.
Yeah, the Jax 3-star buff is part of a larger group of changes that you'll see later. But basically, we're buffing a lot of the 3-star 4-cost carries, so that's part of that. But yeah, that's a pretty good rundown of Jax. He's still going to be a threat. This isn't a major nerf, especially at 2-star. But just a little bit of a tone down. So
yep.
All right, Volibear. Why don't you talk about Volibear?
Oh, this one's big and juicy. Okay. So Volibear has countered like skirmishers and Locket and Nightbringer, all the shields basically for entirety of a set and a half. And so we think that's like too limiting on those comps. You kind of don't want to play skirmishers late game because Volibear just smashes all your shields anyways. So like there's no point to that, and then you don't get the time to ramp up. And for a unit that's already so good and provides like so much utility already, like he doesn't need to have that additional effect basically. And so we're kind of letting him keep the same identity of like smashing shields without like having it just completely delete gigantic shields. So no longer does your 8 Nightbringer shield just disappear. Instead, Volibear will deal double damage of this nerf damage to those units. And if you really wanted to do something fun, you could do like AP Volibear and watch this number be huge on like some shielded units, but not really something I would advise to do.
Yep. Yeah, this should be a bit healthier because like you'll still like a 2-star Volibear is still dealing 500 damage base to a shield, with most of our shields are, around there or smaller. But like a 3-star Rel isn't going to get her shield deleted by this, or like you said, 8 Nightbringer. Big shields get to be big shields, and so that should allow those to continue to be exciting. And Volibear is good in any comp anyway, so did he really need also a specialization? I don't know about that.
Yep, and we kept it at this number so that like he can still smash some shields, and so like he still is kind of a shield counter, just not as hard countery as it initially was.
Yep. Cool. On the Radiant side, Radiant Bloodthirster. This item, it's interesting. It's got good AD. It's got the lifesteal, which is good. But the thing that we're finding is just overperforming as far as this item goes is just that max HP shield is massive. Giving any champion 60% HP, the item may as well read get 600 health when it matters. It's really good. So definitely want to, actually even higher than that with some characters. So yeah, just kind of want to bring that down, so that item's getting a bit of a nerf.
Yeah, the shield is just so valuable, comes in such clutch situations, and then the unit heals back up. So we're tuning that down so that like if you get in danger, it helps you a little bit, but like it doesn't completely save your life, so you can heal back to full all the way back to full again. And the item's still going to be good, we think, but needed this nerf.
All right, Radiant Locket, probably one of the least picked items. We like the whole like 7-unit shield thing, so we're keeping that. But we're taking 200 value out of the shield, and we're putting it in a Radiant bonus to give you 200 HP for all your allies. So essentially, if you have a level 7 comp and you're in that line, not much changed, other than you have a little bit of extra health, which can be good for things like Renewer or something. But the big thing here is like now you can actually be a little bit more flexible with your positioning. Maybe you want to put this on the front line, and your back line is now getting 200 extra HP. Should allow for some more creative outlets for the item. That combined with the Volibear change, hopefully we'll see this item be a little bit more desirable.
And also just HP in general is like it scales with some units' abilities, it scales with some traits, and so like hopefully you can find some value there and make use of it, maybe in Renewer, so that you get the shield, you get HP scaling for the heal, and then because you're full health with the shield, you can regen mana in the beginning of the fight, something like that. We think it's a more flexible stat that like hopefully pushes some players to take the item.
Yep. Radiant Static Shiv. This item is actually decent. It's just hard to find the right user for it, and it kind of lacks an identity. It's just like generically some decent damage. And the other thing is because it's not burst damage, it can often put your enemies to a point where they're like casting sooner and things like that. So we wanted to give it a very clear identity here. And the clear identity is if you want the best magic shred in the game other than Brand, but Brand's really, really slow, this is a good item. This is, pair this with your Vel'Koz now, and you're going to 70% MR shred the entire enemy team. No more worrying about Dragon Claws and Mystics and things like that. This is the item you need to take down those defenses.
Yeah, hopefully this is just something that you can consider when you already have your offensive items on your carry, and I just need MR shred. I want to shred a lot because some people are running a ton of Mystics, and something that maybe, or like you anticipate they will, and so like you consider this item for that kind of scenario.
Yep. All right, on to small changes. Hellion 6 and 8 have certainly fallen out of favor since the Tristana days. And even then, that was, at Tristana's heyday, it was Hellion 4. So we're giving Hellion 6 and 8 a little bit of a nudge. Should make them a little bit better and a little less trappy. Hellion 4 is actually still doing really well. It's a very good opener, so we don't want to touch that right now. This is about if you're willing to invest in the Hellion trait.
Yep, and we covered it.
Cool. Gragas, Chug Jug. We're buffing it because it's fun. And it's okay to be fun. Chug Jug.
Yep, at dawn we chug. And now we do more damage.
Exactly. Moving on. Pike, why don't you talk about Pike?
Yeah, Pike, because of there was been a lot of like system changes with like targeting movement this set. I think for the most part have been really healthy for the game, but Pike, because of these changes, sometimes when he dashes short distances, he'll like still want to target his previous target. And so that kind of scenarios, plus some other like weird ones where like he just basically wasn't as consistent in stunning what you think he was going to stun. That will change now. So he will target whatever he dashes to most of the time. He'll pick a target near there, and then it should stun in that line as you expect.
Cool. All right. Nidalee gets a small HP buff. This is mostly targeted around just how good she is. Yeah, sorry, nerf. You're right. I can't use words. It's late. Nidalee gets a small nerf, specifically because she's really good at 1-star. You get her out of a box 2-1, 2-2. So just trying to bring her down a little bit there. She'll still be a good champion. Nunu, kind of similar, gets a bit of a nerf. That's the word. 50 damage at all levels. Nunu is just kind of deleting some, front lines. He'll just eat a rel by himself. That's okay. Just trying to nudge that down a little bit. And then Yasuo gets a big quality of life change here that I think is going to be really exciting. We reduce the cast time on his ability so that he can get back to autoing attack much quicker. This should make Yasuo just a bit more satisfying to use. It is a buff to the champion. Hopefully that feels really good.
Yeah, I could touch on them slightly. Just Nidalee, such a good early game unit streaker, and she has very high HP for somebody who also has a lot of dodge, and so we're tuning that down slightly so that she's less oppressive in the early game. Nunu just deals a ton of damage when he is high health, and so tuning that down, nudging that down just a little bit, and then Yasuo, hopefully this opens up not that you would want blue buff or the interactions with Dragon's Claw where it just pushes him back into casting. Those kind of scenarios where he's casting a lot should feel a lot less worse because he'll have less delay after that initial slam down. So he should feel a lot more smooth, especially also at high attack speeds.
Cool. Draven gets actually a pretty decent buff here. I almost wonder, we could debate if this could have been in large. But specifically he gets 5 AD, so he gets to hit harder at base. And then at 2-star, his spell will also deal a bit more damage. So this should just make Draven hit a little harder. He's still going to be a front-to-back champion. That's kind of the point. But he should hit very hard. And then you'll see here his 3-star also got a pretty big buff. And you'll see why on the next slide. But just like Jax before, 3-star 4 costs are getting buffed.
Yeah, Draven's going to hit hard now. So
if he's still not good after this, I don't know, man. We're gonna have to do maybe that's when we finally have to pull the 4 range curtain or something. Yeah, I know, but hopefully not. So
yep.
All right. Speaking of 4 cost 3 stars, wow, it's a big slide with a lot of green numbers. Aphelios 3 buffed, Diana 3 really buffed, Fiddlesticks 3 buffed, Galio buffed, Karma buffed. Karma's probably the only one really worth talking about. The big thing with Karma 3 here is that number used to be 30, so she would need, assuming no mana items or even just blue buff, would need 5 autos. But now Karma will go right into the rapid cast state at Karma 3, and so she'll go pew pew, big booms. But basically, a lot of the times people were hitting the 3-star 4 cost, and it just wasn't as satisfying as it felt like it should be. So we're just trying to make sure that these are supposed to feel really satisfying when you pull them off, because they happen pretty rarely unless you're being coached by the greatest coach of all time. So
yes, thank you. Also pew pew big booms. This is part of our overall larger goal of just tightening the balance around 3-star 4 costs. This should bring them all into a more similar power level. Basically bring all the ones that are slightly underperforming into the ones that are doing really, really well. So
yeah, you'll notice no Vel'Koz or Lucian buffs.
Yep.
So cool. Kayle. So again, we talked about this in the postmortem, but Kayle, we're actually happy with the power level except for Deathblade Kayle. And so what we're doing here is we're actually buffing her base AD a little bit and lowering the AD multiplier on the first ascension, where she gets a lot of her true damage. And so that basically what this means is, assuming non-Deathblade, she'll end up about net even. But assuming Deathblade, this is a bit of a nerf. So Deathblade Kayle gets nerfed here. And then Viego, again, we also talked about this on the patch postmortem, but taking it further in the direction we wanted. 1-star Viego, less base damage, which means 0 item Viego, less likely to steal something. But 2-star Viego gets a buff, so that 2-star Viego is very worth, really steal stuff. You want to get that 2-star Viego.
Yep. I think you covered it on the slide.
Cool. Radiant Frozen Heart. Why don't you talk about these? Actually, why don't you talk about both these?
Yeah, sure. So Radiant Frozen Heart, in specific scenarios where like it's good, it's really good, and so we're tuning that down a little bit. No more like Diana jumping in. You have no, your units can't do anything, and then just gets ulted on. So Diana needs a little bit more time in those scenarios, and like Fiddlesticks and other units who use this really well need a little bit more time before getting their first cast off. And then for RFC, Radiant RFC, the unit's just been performing really well on the units that use it really well, and so we're tuning it down just a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, that item is nutty. 80%. Like if you remember Shadow Zeke's, it's like on the same level as Shadow Zeke's and +2 range. Like that item.
Yep,
is
and no
so
downside.
good. And yeah, no downside. Whew. All right, then bug fixes. Bramble Vest no longer blocks more critical strike damage than intended. What was happening is when we made the change from 50% critical strike to 30% critical strike, Bramble apparently had that value hard-coded. Oops. So Bramble was still blocking a bit more on champions with no extra critical strike damage and stuff like that. So should be fixed. It's a little bit of a buff to assassins and anyone against Bramble a little bit. So Bramble's basically a weaker item. Teemo's ability now specifies on the tooltip that it lasts 3 seconds. It always did. Now it just says that. Kennen and Riven stuns now properly cause Lucian to stop firing his ability. That's been a fun ability to deal with. And Cannoneers holding Deathblade will no longer attempt to fire a blank Deathblade related projectile in rare scenarios. So very rare bug, wasn't happening often, but fixed now.
Yeah, and just to be clear, like the Deathblade projectile was like non-lethal or anything like that. It was more just like a visual weirdness thing that no longer happens. So
cool. Hooray, bug fixes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it for the patch. Like I said, it's not a crazy patch. Some things on Revenant, some things on forecast, some minor adjustments, but that's the point we're at in the set. We've got a pretty balanced game here. Not going to say it's perfect. I think some things on the longer term radar are like Tristana getting that back to playable but not unhealthy is one of the big things on our radar. But unfortunately, again, as we talk about locking patches early, like Loc lock, which if you want to change any text, it has to be locked even earlier. And so by the time we can even get to that, it's like, yeah. So
yeah, the patch locks are rough on us. But for the most part, like the meta is pretty stable. We don't want to shake it up too much. We don't want to like change things too much. We just want to continue to make more things playable and just like small tunings here and there. Maybe 1 or 2 big projects, like larger projects, kind of like Volibear and Ivern here per patch. But nothing too major anymore.
That's actually a good point. At this point, what I would ask from players, if you want to give us feedback from here on out on balance, it's tell us things that aren't working. You know, focus on a champion, a comp, an item, and you're just like, I want to play this, but I can't because it sucks. Here's why. And we'll listen, because those are the things we want to fix. We want to widen the meta as much as possible in the last few months so that anything can succeed when played well. So, yeah.
Yep.
Cool. All right. That's going to do it from us. Have fun with patch 11.18. Should be a lot of fun as we get ready for Worlds. And yeah. All right. On behalf of the whole team, until next time, take it easy.
Goodbye.